If you'll stand where you are at this time, go ahead and we'll do the national anthem, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I think my computer went to sleep. We lost our Wi-Fi connection and everything froze up, and so, but we're back. We're back. So welcome to so many of our league members here tonight. We have a lot of guests here. We have some special people even here tonight. So I'm going to start out by, we have 50-year plus members, and we always recognize them. And we have 6 of them here tonight. And if you can stand, that'd be great. Wave your hand, whatever. Jan Barron. Marilyn Haynes. Marilyn's back there. Johnny Hammond. Jerry Prescott. Mary Richards. There's Mary. Here we go. Virginia Stafford. Did she get in here? Well, she didn't make it. So, well, and in regard to that, we recognized a member last year, Jean Peterson, and we gave some scholarships in honor of her. And she turned 100 in December, and she died about 3 weeks ago. But she made it to 100, and she was here last year, and she always came. So, but she was a 50-year one. This is the first one they think she's missed since I've been in league. So that's, and another member that passed away this year was Barb Guiazda, and she was a dedicated league member. So our keynote speaker tonight is Reverend Dr. Brett Becker. Our surprise guest tonight, for most of you, is Dr. Deborah Turner. She is the president of the League of Women Voters of the United States. I had the pleasure of meeting her 35 years ago, and we were friends. So she saved my sister's life as an OBGYN doctor. So that's how wonderful she is to me. So So we have several elected officials here tonight. Herman Permbach, our state senator from Story County. Beth Wessel-Crochelle, a state representative. Yes. Ross, I don't see him here tonight yet. You never know what happens to these legislators if they get, maybe they get tied up someplace in a back room. So, Supervisor Linda Merkin. And our city council person, Gloria Betcher, is here tonight. Lucy Martin had planned to be here, but she's at a state auditor's meeting over in Cedar Rapids, and she didn't know what time she would get out of there. So our tax dollars are working today. So if you are a past president of the League of Women Voters of Ames and Story County, stand up. And guess what? We're looking for more. So you could stand up next year. So, and will the current board members of our Ames League please stand up? I love this board, so they deserve a big round of applause. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, we'll see if it's still awake. Oh, we are. Okay, I would just like to make some reflections on this past year. I can read better with my glasses on. It's June 24th, 2022. Linda Hagedorn and I represented our league in attending the National League Convention in Denver, Colorado. We thank you for that opportunity to meet with members from Iowa and across the United States. During that convention, the U.S. Supreme Court stripped away rights of bodily autonomy and privacy and handed our bodies over to the state legislatures. In unequivocal response, the League Convention voted 872 to 4 in adopting a resolution affirming its commitment to our bodily autonomy and reproductive privacy. In 2014, our league donated to the Turning Point Suffrage Memorial in Lorton, Virginia, in memory of Joyce Hertz. This was the location of the prison holding the women who marched at the White House for the right to vote. While in prison, they engaged in a hunger strike. This caused President Wilson to initiate the ratification of the 19th Amendment to the Constitution. Here I am with Carrie Chapman Catt last fall. We are more when we educate and inform our community. With technology giving us the opportunity to reach many, we are challenged to be an active voice on many issues in our community and nationwide. I, along with the help of the board and members, have risen to that challenge. If you're in Lorton, Virginia, look up this memorial. It is beautiful. There's several statues. There's Carrie Chapman Catt there, and me. I won't be there. But there's a nice little emblem there that says in memory of Joyce Hertz from the League of Women Voters, Ames and Story County. So we have our name on this memorial there. We recognize the importance of educating our community. We are back together in person, but with many thanks to our videographer, Dennis Goodrich. Give him a hand. We are live on Facebook, YouTube, and recordings on KHOI. With Iowa State University, we did voter registration, We made people more aware of the ISU lecture series. We recruited informed presenters for our issues programs. We worked with the NAACP on voter registration and education. The Ames Public Library is a co-sponsor on many of our programs and helped to promote educating our community outside our league membership. The Ames Public Library is an invaluable resource for meeting rooms with tech support. Thanks to KHOI, we have a monthly spot on the second Thursday at 7:15 to 7:30 in the morning on Zoom, so that's nice. They broadcast our forums, learn with the league events, and we have a new program to share later tonight. We partnered with the United Way and KHOI to bring the annual State of the Community to Ames and Story County. We support the League of Women Voters of Iowa, and they support us. We don't need to be formal. Join us at the monthly coffee thing at Wheatsfield on second Tuesday of the month, and our wine down at Torrent Brewery the third Wednesday of the month. This is a whole different level of educating. If you are connected with these organizations, please accept our gratitude. Advocacy through educating and determination is what the League is all about. In March, John and I visited Knoxville, Tennessee, and saw the statue in recognition of Carrie Chapman Catt and Alice Paul. There is also a statue of Mrs. Burns and her son Harry, the Tennessee legislator whose vote, in response to his mother's request to do the right thing, accomplished ratification of the 19th Amendment. We find ourselves being challenged in how to support, how to educate, and how to encourage all to vote. Please be an activist. Volunteer, contact your reps, and write letters. I'm in a room of activists. The message is do not give up. Your actions are needed. Voting matters. Thank you for your support and encouragement this past year. I will engage with anyone and everyone who will join with the League in empowering voters, defending democracy, and in educating the Ames and Story County community on good government. Okay, the next thing in our program is our Carrie Chapman Catt Award. And here to present the award is Louise O'Donnell.
So excuse me here, okay. The person that's going to receive the Carrie Chapman Catt Award is Barbara Wheelock. Come on here. Barbara said she is not comfortable speaking, so she's going to say thank you and goodbye. But I want to make a comment or two about the Carrie Chapman Catt Award. It is bestowed annually to a longtime member who has made significant contributions to the community outside their profession, and that's Barbara. A nominee must not be holding a party-affiliated elected office. The successful nominee will also have demonstrated leadership, attributes, and contributions to the League of Women Voters. A nominating committee reviews all of these submitted nominations for possible candidates, and Barbara was our obvious choice. I'm going to start off with an anecdotal detail about Barbara. She has run a marathon in all of every 50 states. She set that goal. And I think that goal demonstrates many of the attributes that we appreciate about Barbara and her activities. I'm calling you Barbara, and it's very formal, I say. Barb. Her focus, her energy, her determination, her passion, et cetera, are sort of represented by somebody who would do that. Okay. Barb has been on the board and is now serving as our publicity person, and she has advanced our visibility in the community by leaps and bounds. She is connecting with people and making it happen for us, and it's pretty darn wonderful, including working on the video that you produced with the auditors around the state, educating the public as we wish to do. And of course, our goal is to communicate with the public and educate them, and that's what Barb is helping us do. In the community, she's worked with the Access to Crisis Intervention. She's supported the efforts to help those subjected to domestic violence and was involved with the Story County AIDS Coalition Care team. She is founder of leaders of the Ames Better Angels Alliance. She's organized all kinds of meetings with that organization to bring conservatives and liberals together. She's also, a small detail, she's a master naturalist volunteer and has turned her own front yard into a garden in her spare time. So we just had the easiest time picking this award for Barbara and selecting her to honor her with this award, okay? All right. You said you'd say thank you, and
I'll say a pinch more than that.
there you go, girl.
Thank you.
Okay.
So just a pinch more. Our league is really lucky to have many members who give much of their time, their creativity, and energy. And so given that, I'm really humbled to receive this. And thank you and goodbye.
I hope people are taking pictures because I'm not. So make sure we get pictures of some things that are happening tonight. I'd now like Linda Hagedorn to come forward, and she'll present our scholarships for the high school.
Good evening. It's my honor to co-chair the League of Women Voters Ames Story County Scholarship Committee. This is the second year that we've been able to award scholarships. The scholarships are mainly through the benevolence of our donors, as well as our main scholarship, which is apart from our League of Women Voters dues. The committee that received the awards this year consisted of Marcia Thompson, who was co-chair with me, Judy Jones, and Ruth Barnett. We also had the assistance in reading the scholarship applications of Becky Coates and Nancy Halverson. So it's kind of a group effort. What we do with the scholarships is that we call and contact all of the high schools in Story County. And we provide the applications and request that they come to us for evaluation. This year we received 13 applications. They came from Nevada high schools, Gilbert High School, Roland Story, and Colonesco. The first award is our smallest award. It is called our League of Women Voters Future Leader Award, and it is through the benevolence of a donor. It is awarded this year to Libby Sayer from Colonesco High School, who will be going to Iowa State University to major in elementary education. I don't think she's here tonight, but we'll make sure that she gets that Award. We do send the scholarships directly to the universities so that we are sure that they are used as expected. Okay, for our next award, for our next two awards, I'd like to ask Marcia Thompson to please come to the podium, and she's going to present the next two awards. There's our special awards.
I see the parents of many students out there. It's always a pleasure. And I bet it's a pleasure for you to have them not be in my English class anymore. I am pleased to introduce two longtime members, Jan Barron and Johnny Hammond, who will present scholarships awarded in their names by anonymous donors. I ask that they come forward and bookend our scholars. And I guess the scholars aren't up here yet, are they?
No.
Because we don't have all of them here, is that right?
No, Bridget Cahill is here. If you'll come up, please.
Okay.
Who is going to be our recipient of the Jan Barron Academic Award. And let me clarify again that these are through the benevolent donations of anonymous donors who wanted these scholarships to be awarded in honor of these members.
Okay.
So Jan
and Johnny, could you come up as well, please?
The Johnny Hammond Academic Award will be awarded to Marie Saltzman, and I don't think she's here either. But Johnny Hammond is here.
Johnny Hammond is here, yes, of course. Yeah. You can, if you want to stand out in front, you can meet the girl when she comes in. Thank you. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to talk about Johnny and Jan for just a minute, so you're going to have to turn around and listen to some good things about yourself. We didn't tell these people ahead of time. This is a surprise. Yes, they're that's good. Okay, it's difficult to say anything in praise of these two women, Jan and Johnny, that hasn't already been said, and you all know that. But I have limited time, so I'm going to speed through with just a couple of highlights about each one and the wonderful service that they have given in their lifetimes. Jan Barron, retired and highly honored Iowa State University professor of physical education, has led a life of service dedicated to human rights and appreciation of diversity in the Ames community as well as internationally. A portion of a recent tribute to her states, she promotes ethnic and racial understanding, cultural competency, immigration reform, and racial and LGBTQ equality. Jan and her husband, George, have been foster parents to 28 children in need, helping these most vulnerable young people reach their full potential. Jan served as president of the Iowa League of Women Voters for the 1995-1997 term, and for that and other services was awarded the Carrie Chapman Catt honor. Additionally, in recognition of her many contributions in the area of civil rights, she was honored with the Friends of Iowa Civil Rights Award. And she's going to give her award when I'll read a little bit about her person as well. Okay, I want to talk about Johnny Hammond for just a minute now. Johnny Hammond's career in public service at the local, state, and national level ranges from serving as a Story County supervisor to serving 23 years in the Iowa House of Representatives. And could we use her now? And then becoming the first woman to be elected as an Iowa senator. Yes, right, to the Iowa Senate, I better make that clear. As an elected official, she pushed for programs benefiting low-income Iowa children, and that was the Hawkeye program, I believe. Rehabilitation opportunities for incarcerated women, affordable housing, that's still a concern, and early childhood education. And my husband knew Johnny and loved Johnny because she was the one that pushed through the program for elementary guidance, mandating it in the state of Iowa a long time ago. And John really appreciated you for that. Since her retirement, she has continued to volunteer in the Ames community, where she works for justice and human rights for citizens of all ages. Johnny is honored at the Carrie Chapman Cat Plaza of Heroines and was inducted into the prestigious Iowa Women's Hall of Fame in 2005. So we are very pleased to give these two scholarships in the name of these two women tonight. Okay, the first one, the one who will receive Johnny Hammond's award is Maria Salzman, and she is not here. Maria is a graduating senior from Gilbert High School. In her application essay, she talked about doing something about an important issue, and then wrote a letter to Senator Grassley about voting for the assault weapons ban. This hasn't happened yet, but I urge her to keep writing about this and other issues that are important to all young people, and we've seen that particularly this last week. She also voiced her excitement about voting, stating that she finally felt she was participating in democracy. And I have a feeling she will share this enthusiasm with others in her own way, be an advocate for the League's mission of educating people about the issues and urging them to take action. She will attend Iowa State in the fall, and I do hope she will continue her activities to promote democracy. And I'm sorry she isn't here, but that is the Johnny Hammond Scholar tonight. Okay? All right, the second award is going to Bridget Cahill, who is a senior at Nevada High School. Bridget's application was centered on her volunteer activities, and she has amassed 100 hours of helping others, in addition to being active in civic affairs. Bridget teaches swimming and golf during the summer and said she has learned patience through this job. Be patient along the way. You've got a lot of years to practice that yet. Or nice to learn it early. What stood out to me the most in her application was her work for an organization called A Safe Place for Kids. And A Safe Place for Kids is a center for parents to drop off children in the morning if they have to go to work before school begins. And she has been very active in that. They are fed breakfast, I understand, and they do some creative activities, and then the bus picks them up and takes them safely to school. And that's a wonderful service for any town. I was also struck by the spirit and energy that came through in her essay. And I want you to know, Bridget, that if I were much younger, your enthusiasm would inspire me to work for any activity that you needed volunteers. Okay. Good luck at ISU. Thank you. And the League hopes to see you and the rest of the scholars around campus. Okay, thank you.
Okay, next I'd like to ask Ann Kinsel to come to the podium and present our next award.
Get Johnny in there too. Okay, I'm going to sit down.
There we go. Perfect, thank you. So I'm here tonight to award the first annual Diane Milutinovich Speaking Truth Scholarship through the League of Women Voters. Why Diane Milutinovich? She's one of my sheroes, okay? Diane served as head coach and athletics administrator at California State University, Fresno, where she was a tireless advocate for Title IX and gender equity in both education and athletics. Her 27-year career at Fresno State ended when her discrimination lawsuit was settled for $3.5 million. But she didn't stop there. Because of her leadership, two other women at Fresno State who faced incredible gender discrimination were awarded a total of $20 million between them in 2 jury trials. These are the two largest Title IX individual awards in history from one small, undistinguished California State University. Diane never hesitated in speaking truth to power, and she continues the fight for spending equity in athletics at all levels of education. You can learn more about her in Sherry Borchardt's excellent book, 37 Words, Title IX and 50 Years of Fighting Sex Discrimination, where Diane was one of the women featured in that excellent book. So, who is our scholarship winner? Our scholarship winner is Madeline Roach. Madeline, please stand up. And come forward. Why don't you come up here? Okay. So Madeline is just the kind of young woman and student to get this scholarship. Her essay told me so when she stated, "Throughout high school, I felt it's my duty to positively contribute to society by giving back to our diverse community and lifting up those around me. Her desire to seek higher education to become a speech pathologist and help individuals overcome communication challenges is something that Diane Milutinovich and I are proud to support in this small way." Madeline, go forth, advocate for your future clients while always speaking truth to power. And congratulations.
Our last scholarship is the League of Women Voters Ames of Story County Scholarship. It is a $500 award. It is our largest award. And we are very pleased to provide this to Ella Cerna. Ella, will you please come forward? Ella is a senior at Roland Story High School. She will be attending the University of Iowa in the fall. She's going to be majoring in arts and music and theater. She is a person who loves music and who uses that medium in her volunteerism. She has sung at various locations, including Bethany Life Nursing Home, and even during the pandemic, she and her group serenaded the folks at the nursing home outside when they couldn't get in. She also attended the week-long Rotary Leadership Program at Grinnell College, so she is going to be certainly a future leader. And I'd like to read one quote from her essay. She says, "As president of Student Council this year, I introduced myself as a resource to the entire student body at our first assembly. That way, if any of my peers needed someone to talk to, they already knew a friendly face. I am also an active and identifiable member of my school's Mental Health Awareness Club and the Gay Straight Alliance, so others know I am a safe person to talk to if they are struggling." In her other essay, Ella talked about her own interest in helping those with mental health issues, and she was very open about being an advocate in that area. Ella, we are very pleased to award you this scholarship and wish you all the best at the University of Iowa.
Let's go ahead. Kate Keeley's up on the board, so to give our Making Democracy Work Award, as Ann Campbell will present this evening. And then we're going to have remarks by our state and league, and then we'll get to you, Brett. So come on up.
Thank you. I was asked to, make the presentation for the Making Democracy Work Award, which I believe it's a relatively new award that's been going on for the last few years with the League of Women Voters. And it is an award which recognizes the work of individuals or organizations that exhibit leadership in the community of Ames by promoting awareness, action, and equality. If I'm not mistaken, I think generally these awards have been presented to individuals, but this year the League Board has chosen not only an organization, but a very unique and important organization, that is the Iowa State Daily, with the League's recognition of the importance, particularly now, of the role of responsible media. I'm not sure when the League Board made this decision that they would have maybe even had a notion of the kinds of things that have been going on since their award that have made news. For example, whoever would have guessed yesterday's headlines of Dominion versus Fox News and its court settlement, telling us a good deal about the importance of honest media. I will tell you personally also, I was in Minneapolis for the last couple of days reading the Minneapolis Star-Tribune, and the lead editorial on it was "Keep up the fight against misinformation." I might add that one of the things that it says in here is older adults are more likely to access misinformation. I've got to admit, I was in Minneapolis to be a grandmother, so I think I qualify in needing to pay attention. And I think the other thing that has changed radically in the area of media recently is the loss of locally owned newspapers that have been bought out by the corporate world, and of course Ames is in that category. So with all of that background being said, I'm really very pleased that we can now recognize the Iowa State Daily as filling the gap of all of those issues of misinformation, good information, and so on. So the Iowa State Daily, to have this important role, may seem a bit unique to many people in here. It, since 1890, has been the Iowa State student newspaper, and most of us, I would put myself in that category, have tended to think that in reading the Iowa State Daily, it is about what goes on at Iowa State with students, with the university things, and so on and so forth. However, more recently, the Iowa State Daily has broadened its horizons under the leadership of its editor, Kate Keeley, whom I've had the pleasure to get acquainted with, and her interest in broadening the role of the Daily, not just to the confines of the university, but to the community, and for that matter, to beyond that. So I will put in a plug. If everybody in here is not a reader of the Daily, it's high time to be. That the Daily has done an outstanding job. It frankly is the first place I go to see what has been going on in the local, in local news, and particularly in local government. And following it carefully, they have always a reporter in person there, covering, doing good interviewing, and keeping us informed so that democracy can work, so that we know what is going on. So I will put in a plug. It's free. There is no paywall. However, if you go online to subscribe to the Daily, there is a box for giving a donation, and I would certainly encourage that as well. So with that, I'd like to recognize Kate, who will introduce her assistant here, who has been the editor of the Daily this past year. As with most editors, they do graduate, and that's about to happen for Kate, where she is going to carry on her journalistic abilities in Storm Lake. And I think hopefully she will tell us about that. So Kate, I'd like to present you here with this award that you can frame and put on the wall. I'm making democracy work for the Iowa State Daily in recognition of journalistic excellence, reliable reporting, and timely information that promotes awareness, action, and equality to the Ames and Story County community. And it comes with a check.
Thank you so much.
Not for you, but for the Daily. So, can you tell us more what is going on?
Sure. Be happy to. Just to preface, I'm a writer, not a speaker, but I'm honored to be here tonight to represent our staff. I'm joined by our politics editor, Byung. He's going to continue into that position next year, so you can promise the local affairs and state affairs will still be covered well. When you think of reliable, the word reliable, the college demographic might not be the first population that comes to mind, but I can attest that the staff at the Iowa State Daily is reliable and dedicated to informing the Ames public as well as Iowa State University. And now I'd say more than ever, we are in need of a robust press. As recently saw, the Iowa Supreme Court ruled in favor of the public in disseminating timely information and against the state and withholding that information for, in relation to COVID information, it was, I believe, 18 months. So I like to note that that's not a win for only journalists, but it's a win for the public regardless of whatever party you are. It's crucial to have a robust press so that we can ensure that our democracy functions. And it's the job of the press to mirror our community that we serve, and it's no different for our student publication either. We may have different barriers, but we follow the same standards as what the Des Moines Register and the Cedar Rapids Gazette follow, while even though we're still learning. So I'm extremely thankful to the City of Ames for granting us their trust in reporting on what happens here, and I hope to continue to do so, maybe in doing the same job in Storm Lake, but I know for a fact, as I stated before, the Daily will continue on, and we're just extremely thankful to the League for honoring us for the work this year. So thank you to everyone also for your support as well.
I met Kate last fall because Kathy Obradovich, who's in charge of the Capitol Dispatch, gave me her name. She says, I think you should talk to her. So we talked, and one of the best introductions I've had. You know, after seeing the high school scholars, after meeting Kate, we're in good hands, folks. We just need to make sure there's a lot of them. So, all right. I would like to ask Nancy Halverson, and then we'll follow up with Deb. Just a few comments to share about the League. And I don't have your picture up there, Nancy.
Sorry?
I don't have your picture up there.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay.
Okay.
Okay, I'll be really brief. I'm the vice president of the State League. On April 13th, we had a dinner event to recognize Randy Evans, the director of the Iowa Freedom of Information Council. He is one who our Iowa State Daily editor was speaking of with the court case winning and just really exciting. This was our first fundraising event in several years and was quite successful. We raised in excess of $7,000 from a group of 60 people, so pretty good deal. Dr. Turner and her husband attended as well, and we loved having them there. Last year, I'm just going to give you a really quick rundown of what's going on in the state. That was our biggest thing because our treasury has been a great big old goose egg. And so we're happy dancers over $7,000. I mean, that's just amazing. Last year at this event, I introduced the president of Mason City, our newest local at that point in time. Now we are just waiting for national approval on Fort Madison, another. And I'm starting working with Council Bluffs because it's about time Council Bluffs got something that Nebraska doesn't have. No, actually, Nebraska has a fabulous group. They only have 4 locals, but they're doing amazing work. No little bit of credit goes to Diane Bystrom working with them. And I'm a Nebraskan, so I'm not bad-mouthing Nebraska. I'd like to remind everyone of the Iowa Convention in Dubuque. This year, this will be our first live convention since we had one here, since Ames hosted in 2019. And that was a great time, wasn't it, Becky? Becky and I had a little nervous breakdown over that one. But it was great. It came off great. It was kind of like our fundraiser was this past week in Des Moines. You worry yourself to death. You know you're going to belly up. You know it's going to flop. And then everything just turns out beautifully. And I was really proud that 5 members from the Ames local attended our fundraiser. The convention will be Saturday, June 10th in Dubuque. And there will be Friday evening activities as well, one of which is a cocktail cruise on the Mississippi. Some of us will be in meetings that night, but you all have fun. And there's a fantastic river museum right along the river. Dubuque has become a real tourist destination, and it's really beautiful. They will be emailing out next week with more details from everyone on how to sign up for everything. Our keynote speaker for convention is someone who is with us tonight, Dr. Deborah Turner. Would you like to say a word or two about convention and how important it is to be in person, or just say you all come?
Yes, you all come. Conventions are fun, but the best thing about convention is you get to interact with other league members, and there's nothing more energizing to build up your endorphins than to work and be with league members. So come and have a good time.
All right, thank you.
There's a sheet on your table. If you want to go to convention, put your name on there. We are allowed with our membership here at Ames, we get 15 voting members. We have more voters for the convention than any other league in the state. So, wow! It is, it's good. So, if you're interested, put your name down here and we'll start working out who you want to go with, who you want to stay with, and all those things. But that's if you're interested. This gets us started on that. So, Deborah, let's hear what you want to tell us real quick. This is just so wonderful that she said, I'm in town. I think I can come.
Well, I woke up this morning with my mind trained on freedom. I woke up this morning with my mind trained on freedom. I woke up this morning with my mind trained on freedom. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Freedom in America is the right to vote. And that's what we are all about. So, good evening. evening, my friends. I'm only going to take a couple of minutes because I'm so excited to hear from the Reverend Dr. Brett Becker about something that's dear to my heart, education. And that's probably one of the reasons I agreed to come this evening, quite frankly. But okay, I returned to Iowa after a brief 7-year hiatus because I believe we can be who we know we are. I'm sure as I stand here this evening before you, many are deeply concerned about what the near future will bring to us. But we know as an organization, we envision a world where we will have a world of peace, we will have a world of equity, and we will have power within our vote. And I tell you, I have been inspired this evening. The young people that I saw this evening receiving rewards, like I said, we are in good hands, and thank goodness, because I'm not going to be around to do all of this work. So I'm putting it on you guys, okay? But I would like to reflect for just a moment on the amazing accomplishments of the League in 2022, because sometimes we forget about what we really do. We protected 17.7 million people through litigation to defend voting rights, civil rights, and fair elections last year. We completed the first season of our people-powered fair maps, and we managed to engage 2 million people in the redistricting process. We registered over at least 900 registration events at high schools and community colleges, and that's only the ones that were reported, because we know there were many more that weren't reported, and we registered over 140,000 new voters. We collectively sent tens of thousands of letters to Congress to advocate for equal rights, education protection, and voting rights. We shared nonpartisan voting resources with over 23 million people as we grew both in League numbers and members. We, the League of United States, or League of Women Voters, is 103 years old this year. But we did not get to be at 103 by accident. We did it because we worked hard. We are not the same league, however, as we were in 1920, but our values of empowering voters and defending democracy remains the same. Over the past decade, the League has embarked on a transformation journey. Some people hear the word transformation and they go, oh my goodness, I don't want the League to change. However, this is an endeavor to build the next century of the League of Women Voters. We introduced it at our 2018 National Convention, and we developed a transformation roadmap, which was formulated with input from leagues at all levels, local, state, and national, as an action plan for continuing the evolution of the League, building a renewed, a larger, a more unified, and a more impactful organization that is far more diverse than it has been in the past. Remember, we have always been an organization that evolved with the times. That is how we have stayed relevant and built our power over the last 103 years. Then at our National Convention last June, the League delegates adopted bylaws and budget commitments to begin the work of this transformation, to ensure that we are the nimble, thriving voter empowerment force that our nation's democracy needs us to be. This is called our Structured Transformation Plan, the next phase of our shared vision of the League's future. I am proud that League members, staffs, boards, and convention delegates came together for this historic moment. Together, we fixed our eyes on meeting the needs of all voters and being a national leader for democracy. So you ask, why are we even on a transformation journey? Because building League power at every level is necessary to fulfill our mission of empowering voters and defending democracy. We have made many great strides over since our 100-year birthday. We have allowed ourselves to be even more impactful during these challenging, shall we say, election cycles. But we need to do more. We really must strengthen our movement across our great nation to rise to the occasion and meet these challenges head on, together as one League. And because each region of our country has unique challenges and opportunities and difficulties and great resources, when it comes to empowering voters and defending democracy, our approach has to be attentive to those differences. One size does not fit all, but one voice of the League does. Because we know there's one thing true: a strong League means a strong democracy. State and local leagues are the League of Women's Voters' grassroots power, and they're our strength. our memberships fuel our power. I like to say, and I don't always get applause when I say this at the national level, so you hear it here though, that if it weren't for local leagues, we wouldn't need a national league. Because the local leagues are our boots on the ground. Look at the work that you guys have talked about, what you've done today within your community. It is phenomenal, and it's happening across our country. I'm amazed as I travel from league to league to find out. So we really, really are the boots on the ground. Now we know that defense is needed as we see our democratic institutions erode at every event. We also know that we have solutions to offer, including our 50-year moonshot goal of abolishing the Electoral College. So investing in our own growth is not only important to our organization, but vital to American democracy. And we are going to put our efforts and our money and our work and our blood and our guts and our boots on the ground into doing this. These past 10 years of research and planning resulted in our transformation roadmap. And now we are moving on to the next phase of our transformation journey, building out the framework, actually implementing what we are going to do. This is called Framing the Future, and you all will be hearing more and more about this over the next 12 months. I am proud to lead an organization fueled by the grassroots. I am proud to be your president during this time of great progress and change in our history, and I am proud to be an Iowan. Together, we will build the League of the Future to empower voters and defend democracy for the next 100 years. And by the way, when I say we, I mean all of us, because I am, to put it very simply, what each of you are, a proud member of the League of Women Voters. And as a final moment before I step off the podium and quit talking, I would just like to say that education has been a critical part of what we do as a League from the very beginning. The League is aware that the approach to education in our country and in the state is eroding. It has been taken too much for granted the way I see it. So as we see people pushing back on denying voting rights, we must also push back on denying educational rights. The young people getting educated today are our future. And without the right tools, it could be a sad state. So as we reach out and do our work for voting, we need to reach out and do our work for education. And as we do that, we need to encompass our DEI approach to this work. So I want to emphasize education, voting rights, healthcare rights. These are not partisan rights, these are American rights. And we need to stand up for these as American issues. So with that challenge, I say we just have to keep on keeping on. And I'm so excited to hear Dr. Becker talk tonight about education. My mother used to say when I was knee-high to a grasshopper, get your education, that's the only thing they can't take away. Thank you.
So, here we are, our keynote speaker. So, I'm going to, John's going to come up and introduce, let's see if this thing's still working. Oh! And I will take care of getting this ready for Brett.
Well, this is a very anticlimactic introduction of the keynote speaker tonight. The Reverend Dr. Brett Becker has been pastor of the Collegiate Presbyterian Church of Ames for nearly 5 years. He's here tonight with his wife, Anita. Anita is a retired teacher's aide and Title I instructor, and he came to us from Santa Barbara, California. Anita, sorry. Dr. Becker earned his doctorate in homiletics from the San Francisco Theological Seminary in 2001. His dissertation title was Harry Emerson Fosdick and a Pastoral Prophetic Hermeneutic for Preaching. You can ask him more about that. I looked up that word. In addition, Dr. Becker serves on the Ames Community School Board. He was elected in 2021, and he's told me that he won't have to go through another campaign until 2025. So I think that's a pretty good indication he's probably going to run again, I hope. So Dr. Becker says he likes to think deep thoughts. So, well, let's hear what those deep thoughts are. He does, while having deep thoughts, enjoy Ames. He likes to walk in the woods with his dog Brody and think about his daughter Leah, who's working on a PhD at the University of Illinois. So I think I have nothing more to say other than I was really impressed by Dr. Becker when he gave words of encouragement and support to a group of high school students who were marching for something that I consider very important, and that is the restoration of the assault rifle ban and some reasonable regulations for the carrying and possession of handguns. So there was a march through the city of Ames, and Dr. Becker set him off on that mission. I appreciate that. So let's give a warm welcome to Dr. Becker.
Thank you for that. Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to be with you tonight. It's a pleasure and it's an honor to be in your presence. Amid the many challenges in education and politics facing us today, from threatened book bans to transgender persecution to new restrictions being placed on voting and voting rights, I cannot think of another group that I would rather speak with. Now, the way I just ended that last sentence reminds me of a story about my father that I would like to share with you. You see, my father was an English teacher. The only thing worse than being a preacher's kid, and you can talk to my daughter about that reality, the only thing worse than being a preacher's kid is being an English teacher's kid. Here's what I mean. When I was 12 years old, my father and I were out driving in the car. Actually, he was driving, I was riding. And a song came on the radio. It was a Diana Ross song, and it was nominated that year for the Academy Award for Best Original Song from the movie Mahogany. And the title of that song was, Do You Know Where You're Going To? Now, how many of you remember that song? Many of you remember that. For those of you who don't, it went like this. And I'll try to give you my best impression of a cantor. It went, do you know where you're going to? Do you like the things that life is showing you? And my father reaches out and shuts off the car radio. I said, hey, Dad, I like that song. What in the world do you think you're doing? He replied, I'm educating you. Educating me? Yes, he said. The first line of that song does not use proper grammar. Do you know where you're going to ends with a preposition. And then he had the audacity and the temerity to add, what she should have sung was, and I need all y'all's help with this, what she should have sung was not, do you know where you're going to, but rather, do you know to where you're going? Oh, it makes me feel so good that I'm not the only one who experienced grammar trauma when I was growing up. And I said, Dad, come on. You've got to give Diana Ross some credit. You've got to allow the songwriter some artistic license. Yes, I understand that in our spoken language we need to speak properly with grammar, but it's a song. Are you kidding me? Do you know to where you're going? What's the next line supposed to be? Something about hoeing or rowing? I said, you've got to allow her to find a word to rhyme with. My father just sneered at me and said, rhyme with? He growled, rhyme with? Brett, is that actually the way you want to end that sentence? And I knew I was had. So I shifted into argumentation mode, and I said, Dad, you're out of your mind. Nobody cares about mechanics like this anymore. It's not a big deal in song to have different structure. Again, when we speak, yes, we want to have correct grammar, but this is what we're coming to. And so I said, Dad, what kind of crazy grammatical world are you living in? And I can't believe that I made the same mistake again. And then I peeked over at my dad, and he was happy as a clam driving the car, so full of himself, so self-assured. And then he said, I think I've made my point. And he reached out, and out of pure pity, I am sure, he turned the car radio back on. I mean, he turned back the car radio on. The radio turned back on, did he? Now I just sound like Yoda. Whatever. And that's what's wrong with our politicized educational system today. Reactive policymakers at the national level in our nation's capital and in state houses across our country are seeking to turn back the clock on liberal education, to reinstitute a fundamentalism of sorts where we go backwards to supposed basics in learning. Just standard history, thank you, not in-depth Black history, for God's sake. Just mainline sex ed, not this specialized, relevant, up-to-date information, please. And thus, as was mentioned earlier, you and we need to tell them that, listen, we've long ago moved beyond the mere basics of human sexuality, of gender identity, of racial understanding, that we are in fact committed today to a broad-based education for our students, to inclusive social justice for all, and to the vital importance, yes, of social emotional learning for adults and for kids. Now, to illustrate our country's failure to sustain such commitments and to highlight our lack of comprehension in these areas and more, let me go back to, do you know to where you're going? Do you realize that because I had purposely so laser-focused us on the nitpicky grammar of this alteration of the song, that we never did discuss the meaning of the words of the song? Do you know where you're going to is about intelligently evaluating life's journey and our place in that journey as we learn, as we grow, as we hopefully become adept at learning to relate to one another better as human beings. About honestly asking ourselves if that which lies ahead on our current trajectory of intolerance and mutual misunderstanding is what we really want. For like grammarians who never get beyond the legalistic evaluation of a sentence, our reactive policymakers are so focused on the mechanics of who can use this bathroom and who can't, that innocent observers miss the meaning underneath such oppressive actions. That people, when they are denied self-worth and social standing by our system, are in effect being bullied by the so-called status quo. When leaders attempt to censor what teachers in our schools are allowed to say and who they are allowed to affirm for their identities, and determine which books are allowed in our cultural centers of knowledge, namely in our libraries and in our schools, then we are clearly on the road to greater polarization, further alienation, and widespread fear. Nevertheless, if our policymakers are going to insist that we stick with the fundamentals and the so-called basics of learning, then fine. Fine. Let's you and I, therefore, tonight examine some basic prepositions that will actually help us to widen the margins of our thought and our experience, to deepen our educational expertise, and to broaden our multicultural perspective. Let's look at tonight at the prepositions alongside, toward, and for. Social scientists today are beginning to push back hard against minimalistic and limiting thought by insisting that the different aspects of a person's identity not be isolated from the totality of who they are. For instance, when I see you, if I'm only seeing your race, if I'm only seeing your politics, if I'm only seeing your religion, if I'm only seeing your gender and not all of you, then I am tragically and blissfully unaware of the level of discrimination that you must endure on a daily basis when you are not seen as a whole person. Or the level of privilege that certain other persons may enjoy when one aspect of that person is elevated above the other qualities that they have. For I must consider your political identity alongside your gender identity if I wish to be inclusive and accepting of you. You must consider my religious identity as well as my social identity if you wish to do the same. The scholarly word for this total way of seeing and understanding another person is intersectionality. Now, I always seek to define and describe 7-syllable words whenever they're used. It's a strict rule of mine. So first, I'll give you the definition, and then I'll provide you with an illustration of intersectionality. Here's the definition. It's from Wikipedia. Intersectionality is an analytical framework for understanding how a person's various social and political identities combine to create different modes of discrimination and privilege. Intersectionality identifies multiple factors of advantage and disadvantage. Now, a picture, as you know, is worth 1,000 words, or in this case, 32 words of a long definition. So to illustrate intersectionality, I would like you to picture in your mind right now an intersection. Any four-way stop will do, perhaps something like this one. Now, imagine that an accident has just occurred in this intersection. You can decide what the accident was. You have witnessed this accident, and so you responsibly remove your cell phone from your pocket or from your purse, and you call 911 to report it. The operator at the 911 call center asks you to describe the location of the accident that you have just witnessed. So you look up at the street sign above your head, and it says the word black. You dutifully tell the operator that the accident happened on Black Street. Yet that may simply not be enough information for the 911 operator. Granted, if Black Street is but a block long in your town, then yes, it will be perfectly clear where to send the ambulance, where to send the paramedics. But if Black Street is lengthy, if it's a boulevard, then you're going to need to provide the operator with the cross street of that intersection. So you walk around to the other arm of the street sign above you, and it says the word woman. So you say to the operator, the accident happened on Black woman. For you see, that's different and oftentimes more severe than if the accident had only happened on black or if it had only happened on woman. In fact, the accident happened on Black woman. Again, the idea of intersectionality says that the social and political and racial categories into which we fall or into which we have culturally placed others cannot be viewed independently from one another, as hard as we might try to do that. But rather, they must be viewed alongside one another in their totality. For those categories or identities will compound the amount of discrimination that some individuals will receive from our society, and at the same time multiply the amount of privilege that other individuals will be granted by our society. And thus, being a woman in this U.S. culture, as many of you well know, with all of its attendant challenges and slights and indignities that you must face, that means one thing. But being a black woman in our inequitable system means something completely different. The discrimination is multiplied. And until we understand all that, we will forever be oblivious to the level of other people's pain. Now, imagine, if you will, that the intersection that we had in the foregoing accident when it occurred in reality had been made up of 4 long roads intersecting each other, and not just 2. And that those streets were named Black, Woman, Queer, and Transgender. And let's flip those words around so that they read the way that we might say them in a sentence. Black, queer, transgender, woman. And I ask you, would any accident in that intersection of identity be worse in our culture than one where all those identities were not together present? And would the police come as quickly to that intersection? There's exponentially more prejudice, bias, and hatred in our society toward this intersection of identity than perhaps any other intersection. Still, even in this intersection, there's an outsized level of discrimination and unconscious bias when compared to other intersections. This is Stephanie Wright. In the Sunday, March 19, 2023 edition of the New York Times, her story is told. Ms. Wright was an assistant United States attorney in the Northern District of Iowa. She was the first African American, and for 24 years, from 1994 to 2018, she was the only black prosecutor, man or woman, in that federal district which spans the rural northern half of our state. This fact is why, while flipping through a brand new book last year entitled The History of the District Court in the Northern District of Iowa, 1882 to 2020, Ms. Wright found that in a list of 88 assistant U.S. attorneys who had worked in that prosecutor's office during that 100 plus years, her name was the only one missing. The only one. To her credit, Ms. Wright contacted the publisher of the book and pointed out the omission. She immediately received an explanation that the omission was, quote unquote, clearly inadvertent. Really? The only black woman to have held that position, the only black person to have held that position, and she wasn't remembered. She wasn't seen. Again, to her credit, Ms. Wright announced, "I am not going to be forgotten." And she demanded that an online version of the book be updated and that 2 corrected hardbound copies be printed for her at no cost, and that notices be run in Iowa newspapers that the book had been corrected. She said, "This country has ignored black women, black people, and we don't find out about our history until years later." Well, the online version of the book was indeed corrected, but it would be cost prohibitive, she was told, to print a new hardback version, and in fact, no notices would ever be seen in Iowa newspapers. This, exactly this, is why learning to understand intersectionality is so important. If Miss Wright had been a black man, would she likely have been forgotten and left out of that book? If she had been a powerful white man whose name was somehow inadvertently omitted, would it then have been cost prohibitive to print 2 corrected hardbound copies of the book? I think we all know the answer to that question. And thus, when we only take into account one aspect of another human being's identity or their experience, and thereby assume that we now know and understand who they are. We are actually devaluing the whole person that they are. Now, to extend this analogy, since I'm one of a proportionally fewer men in this conference hall tonight, if I were to make the assumption that you, sir, in the center table wearing the striped shirt with the blue jacket, if I were to assume that because we're both white men, you wouldn't necessarily know something about me. If I assume that you're just like me, you wouldn't know that one of the street signs in my personal intersection of identity reads, "Parents divorced when he was just 7 years old." Or, in fact, one of your street signs might read, I don't know, but it might read, "Passed from home to home in the foster care system throughout his childhood." You see, we might wrongly assume that just because we're both white men that we're exactly alike, just looking at each other, and that others will probably treat us the same based on that outward appearance. But those two experiences that we've had, they might sound similar, divorce, being passed from foster home to home, but they're radically different from one another, and they're equally transformative in our lives to who we've become. Now, imagine that in addition, that one of the two of us is actually living with a serious physical disability. Or that one of our street signs in actuality says gay or non-binary. Intersectionality insists we acknowledge that we always exist as more than just one marker, as more than just one thing. We all do. And that if someone is in more than one discriminated against class or social category, then their experience of prejudice in this world is totally different and likely much greater than is ours. So, policymakers, educators, preachers, cultural influencers, if we're going to teach adults and kids the basic prepositions of life, then the preposition alongside has to include discussions about gender identity, race, and class and caste differences, and more. In short, we have to talk about intersectionality. Not about banning topics of discussion in schools or about banning books. That only makes things worse for our future. This is not a hard concept to grasp either, is it? If we can understand an intersection of identity, then so can our children. So can a child. They can understand this. They're capable of learning this. Toward is the second basic preposition we have to explore. Toward, of course, means in the direction of. If we in our educational system, in our schools, and in our government are to move toward widening the margins so that those on the outer limits of them are represented fairly and can have their voices heard and brought into the center of the discussion, then we have to become serious about moving toward broader inclusion and acceptance. And here, I want to introduce you, if you've never heard of her, I want to introduce you to Bell Hooks. Of course, that was her pen name. Her given name was Gloria Jean Watkins. She was a Black American author and a social activist, and at one time, a professor of English, African, and Afro-American studies at Yale University. Bell Hooks died just over a year ago at the age of 69. Back in 1984, she wrote the book Feminist Theory from Margin to Center. And 2 years prior to that, she coined the phrase, the oppositional gaze. The oppositional gaze, meaning the look that those on the margins of society are not allowed to give to those in the center. You know, you're familiar with it. that look of defiance and self-confidence. In fact, just 2.5 weeks ago, we saw this very look played out in the LSU, Iowa Hawkeyes Women's NCAA National Championship game, which LSU, unfortunately for us Iowa fans, went on to win. Now, in case you didn't watch the game or read about it afterwards, near the end of the contest, Angel Reese, one of LSU's star players, as the game was winding down, gave the now iconic "you can't see me" gesture to Caitlin Clark, the Hawkeye star player. A gesture of defiance, a gesture of swagger. Importantly, Angel Reese is black, Caitlin Clark is white. And when Reese made that gesture toward Clark, the outrage on social media was intense and palpable. How dare she? Who does she think she is? Does she have no respect? And I'm quoting the nice responses on social media. But Caitlin Clark at times has also made that gesture. In fact, she's made it numerous times. Other basketball stars and sports heroes have made this gesture. Clark, to her credit, pointed this out, defending Reese and defending her competitiveness. And that seemed to calm the waters. But I ask, what if Clark had not defended Reese? What if the white player had instead stayed silent or criticized Reese? What would have been the political fallout and the personal fate for the black basketball star, Angel Reese? In a 1992 article, The Oppositional Gaze and Black Female Spectators, Bell Hooks introduces us to the term othering. Othering. Othering is when we define and treat another person as someone who belongs to a socially subordinate category, understood broadly as the category of the other. Othering. At a subsequent conference entitled Thinking About Race in America, Ms. Hooks adroitly drew upon the work of psychologist Rollo May. Hooks pointed out how May, in his book, The Courage to Create, described his attempt, and this is fascinating, described his attempt to understand how children who are abandoned by their parents cope with life. The psychologist, after interviewing a large number of subjects, noted a marked discrepancy between the responses of children from privileged circumstances who had been abandoned and those who had been born into the so-called underclass and been abandoned. The latter, the children born into the lower caste, are you ready? Were much more successful at coping with abandonment in a healthy and constructive way than were the children born into privilege. Why? May discovered that the defining difference between the two groups lay in the extent to which the children knew and understood early on that abandonment might be their fate. Here's why. In the privileged families, he discovered, marital discord and possible dissolution of the family unit were never discussed. When my parents told me that they were going to get a divorce when I was 7 years old, I'd never even seen them argue. It was a total shock to me. I was totally unprepared for that. I just went into shock mode, and I remember saying, okay, I'm going to go ride my bike now. And that was it. You see, the parents of the privileged families did not talk about it. Maybe they were embarrassed, maybe they were proud and they didn't want to, but they squelched over and covered over the truth. By contrast, the parents of the so-called underclass leveled with their kids about the precarious state of their family. The children, therefore, had a jump at coming to grips with their eventual abandonment, and even more importantly, they did not deeply resent their parents for having kept them in the dark about it. Why is this crucial? Because the moral drawn by Bell Hooks from this story is that May's decision to take seriously the people at the margins of society taught him something that could benefit the whole of society. Allow me to say that again. May's decision to take seriously the people at the margins of society taught him something that could benefit the whole of society. Namely, that we parents need to transparently communicate truth to our children, to better equip them for the realities of life, not to keep uncomfortable truths from them, truths that are uncomfortable for us, I should say. A lesson that we will most likely miss if we focus solely on the center of our interests and never on the margins. Today, a growing number of conservative policymakers, leaders, and even some teachers want to advance the argument that really we're all starting from the same place in life, that we have the same opportunities as each other, that we therefore don't need to focus on our differences at all, and that indeed the past is behind us and we simply need to move forward together. Let's start here where we are, they say. But you and I know it's not so simple as that, don't we? To move toward health and healing and mutual understanding, we must first pay attention to our differences, to recognize them, to see each other in the midst of those differences. For until we're willing to look in from the margins of our culture with those who reside there, thus expanding the margins toward the center, until we're willing to do that, we will never make progress toward our goal of equity and unity. No matter how many sermons we hear preached, no matter how many lectures we hear delivered, the work of moving toward that goal of equity is yours and mine to do. No matter how old we are, no matter how many battles we have already fought, it's ours to do today, if it's going to get done. Finally, then, the last preposition with which we need to grapple in the intersection of identity and education and politics is the preposition for. For whom are our reactive legislators nervously changing the laws of our state? For whom are they putting limits on the curriculum allowed in our classrooms? For whom are we determining what can be read and taught and discussed in our schools? If it's only for us in the center, if it's only for us, then we're dooming ourselves to a future of failure and ignorance and even irrelevance in our kids' lives and in this world. If indeed the very things that we and our children need to be open to learning, we are instead banning and dismissing and further marginalizing, then we'll miss our chance for growth, for diversity, for real education, and for mutual upbuilding. You know, contrary to popular opinion, the word politics is not a dirty word. It actually derives from the Greek word meaning citizen, and from the word polis, meaning city. My fellow citizens, if we must have politics in our city, in our schools, and among our nation's people, then let's be sure that it is for all of our citizens, for all of our students, and for all of those who find themselves in the intersections of life, especially for those who find themselves on the margins of our society. For they have something profound to teach us, and we must learn from one another. And so, I ask all of us, and Dad, pardon me as I use this poor grammar, I ask this question: do we know where we're going to? Do we understand the things that life is teaching us? Where are we going to? We need to know.
thank you. I'm going to have to watch the rest of my talking. Lucy's going to have a little check mark over there every time I end with a preposition from here on. So thank you, Doctor. Thank you for being here tonight.